Welcome along to my teaching series, The Jesus That John Knew. This is part 10 in our series, and we're about to enter John chapter 2 and look at a story that's very familiar to us. But I want to just say to you at outset, this is such a crucial moment in the development of the gospel, because you see, John is going to talk to us about 7 signs, and he's going to space those signs out throughout the gospel narrative. But those 7 signs are going to be signs of such incredible importance. Let me explain to you how important they are. John says at the end of the gospel, he says, "Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that you might believe." Now previously I've said to you that when John talks to us in the gospel about believing, he wants to say not simply that you'll just believe, but having believed, you'll go on in your believing. You'll mature in your believing. And in fact, I suggested to you last time that the promise for Nathanael is that Nathanael will be someone who would see greater things. But the seeing of the greater things was only the beginning of the story. The fullness of the story was the doing of the greater things. But maybe even that's not the fullness of the story, because in John 1 we hear that you'll see greater things. In John 14 we'll hear that you'll do greater things. But in John 17 we'll discover something extraordinary that is so explicit in 1 John, which simply says, just as he is, so are we in this world. And so we move from the child phase to seeing greater things into the teenage phase where we do greater things, into the father phase where we are the greater thing. So there is this wonderful maturing, this wonderful development, and we see these phases moving all the way through the Christian life. I told you at the beginning that we have this sense in which, to me, we begin with this sense of the light of Christ within all men, and this moment of incubation, and the incubation phase moves into the inkling phase, and the inkling phase moves into the incarnation phase, and all the time we see this evolution of grace, this development along the way of love. But here John says there are these, Jesus did so many signs. He says somewhere, if there wouldn't be enough books, enough paper to write all the signs that he did. But I'm going to tell you about 7 particular signs. Of all the things that he did, of all the signs and all the wonders, I'm going to isolate them and bring them down to 7. Can you imagine the challenge if I said to you, okay, I want you to tell me the 7 greatest songs that were ever written. We're going to do a desert island disc, and I want you to bring your 7 favourite songs. Well, what kind of songs would you bring? Maybe you'd say, oh, but do you mean 7 jazz songs and 7 soul songs and 7 ballad? No, just 7 songs. What about if I said to you, if you're a lover of sport, as I am, a big lover of football, what are the 7 greatest goals that were ever scored? I'd say, who, by Brazil? Or by a particular player? Or no, the 7 greatest goals that were ever scored. Oh my goodness. And it would be a difficult thing for us to do. The 7 greatest books that were ever written. The 7 greatest places you could ever visit. And so on and so on and so on. But what John is going to say is, look, is this. These signs that I want to talk to you about are signs that point to something beyond themselves. And the signs that he chooses are these. The changing of the water into wine at the wedding of Cana. And that's the study we're going to come to. The healing of the nobleman's son. The healing of the invalid who was at the pool of Bethsaida for 38 years. The feeding of the 5,000, the walking on the water, the healing of the blind man, and the raising of Lazarus. That's it. And so what I want to suggest to you is that those signs have to be pregnant with so much of grace, so much of the mystery of the kingdom, so much of the stuff of God, that we need to go very carefully through them to understand and see what's actually in them. You see, the thing is, and the sad thing is, that many of us in the modern era in which we live have become people that follow signs. But the truth of the matter is that we don't follow signs. The promise is that the signs follow us. And these signs, these signposts, these identity markers around the kingdom are going to be of such incredible significance, because I'm going to show you as we work our way through them that Jesus is interested in reaching out in two very different directions, but kind of one with the left hand and one with the right, and gathering people from different sides of the street and bringing them close to him. On the one hand, he's going to reach out his arm, his left hand actually, because to a very serious way, what you're going to have to see is what Luther called the left arm of power, which is a very unusual kind of power, because it's a counterintuitive power. It's not the force, it's the kind of power that's going to make John the Baptist say, are you the one, or should we look for somebody else? On the other hand, you're going to see him move with his right hand and just sweep through and do some things for people that you will just be left thinking, my goodness. But my suggestion is this, that he will move amongst two parts of our community. He'll move on the important, and I want to call them the self-important, and he'll show grace to the impotent. And for the person that is self-important, perhaps their way of life and the way they approach life is to say this: I can live without Christ. And so for them, perhaps the way of life for them is not Christ, but I. And for those people, there will come and will have to come, a crisis. And that crisis will have to be so acute that it's in that crisis that they will see that Christ is. And in that crisis, in those circumstances that is beyond their ability to fix, beyond their financial resources to resolve, what they're going to come in touch with is they're going to come in touch with their impotence. And so in that early incubation phase that I referred to earlier on, there comes a catalyst, there comes a moment where we can say that the virus, if you like, whilst it is in the system, no symptoms have yet been shown, but the catalyst sparks that, and almost invariably the catalyst will be a crisis. For the courtier that we will see in a few sessions' time, his crisis is so serious, his son is dying. And he will come to a moment where he'll have to confront the reality of that. In the story that we're going to look at fairly shortly, you're going to see the MC of a wedding, a man of some importance, in a crisis. Why is he in a crisis? He's in a crisis because, as you're going to hear early in the story, the declaration from Jesus' mother, the wine has failed. And what a statement that is. A statement that goes out, that rings out across the whole world. The wine has failed. The wine has failed. And we'll see what the imagery is all about there. Then we're going to see what happens when Jesus reaches down to the impotent. Because if the important man says, I can live without Christ, the impotent man says, Christ can live without me. And the impotent man, coming from his heart of brokenness and lostness and lastness and leastness, he has to see his importance to God. He has to see how important he is to God. So with the important man, he's brought to the place of his impotence. And with the impotent man, he has to be lifted up to a place of importance. Because he's saying, just not I. But for both of these people, for both of these categories of people, they will journey through crisis, through moving from unfaith to faith. Will move into this most remarkable situation where they can say, 'Twas not I, but Christ. I look forward to getting into this study with you next time as we consider the wedding of Cana. God bless you.